What if the person you trusted the most turned out to be your worst betrayer? My wife, my partner, the love of my life, hid secrets darker than I could ever imagine. But when the truth unraveled, I did something she never saw coming. This is not just a story of betrayal, it's a journey through lies, heartbreak, and a revenge so calculated. It changed everything. Stay until the end, because you won't believe how it all unfolds. Chapter 1. The Perfect Facade. They say hindsight is 20/20th, but at the time, my life felt perfect. I was living the American dream. My name is Ethan Price, a self-made software developer with a thriving career, a cozy house in the suburbs, and a wife who, at least to me, seemed like the epitome of grace and beauty. Amanda. She was everything I ever wanted. Or so I thought. We met at a coffee shop 7 years ago. It sounds cliche, I know. She was standing in front of me in line, fumbling through her bag for spare change, and I, the ever-gallant gentleman, offered to cover her coffee. She laughed, her voice like music, and said, "You just want an excuse to talk to me, don't you?" She wasn't wrong. Within months, we were inseparable, and a year later, we were married. Our life together was something out of a movie. At least, that's what I told myself. We had our share of small arguments, who doesn't? But Amanda always had a way of making everything feel okay. Her smile could disarm a bomb. Or maybe I was just blinded by love. Either way, I never saw the cracks forming in our seemingly solid foundation. Looking back, the signs were there. She'd started coming home later from work, her excuses flimsy but delivered with such confidence that I didn't question them. Late meetings, she'd say. Team dinners. I chalked it up to her being ambitious, something I'd always admired about her. But sometimes I'd catch a look in her eyes, a fleeting shadow that disappeared as quickly as it came. Then there were the missed calls. Her phone would buzz incessantly, and she'd pick it up only to step into another room. "Just work," she'd say with a quick smile. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Because the alternative was unthinkable. Friends would sometimes comment on how lucky I was. "Amanda's such a catch," they'd say, and I'd nod, pride swelling in my chest. But there was always something else in their tone, a hesitation I couldn't quite place. At time, I dismissed it. Now, I wish I'd listened more closely. The first real crack appeared on a Friday night. Amanda was out late, again, and I decided to wait up for her. Midnight turned into 2 a.m., and my calls went unanswered. When she finally walked through the door, her hair disheveled and her makeup smudged, she looked surprised to see me still awake. "Work ran late," she said, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to press her for details, but something in her tone warned me not to. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a seed of doubt was planted. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. And once doubt takes root, it grows. Chapter 2. The crack widens. Doubt, once planted, is relentless. It creeps into every corner of your mind, twisting and distorting even the most innocent moments. Over the following weeks, I found myself analyzing everything Amanda did. Every smile, every laugh, every touch, it all felt different now, like it was part of some elaborate performance. But maybe I was just being paranoid. That's what I told myself, at least. One evening, Amanda's phone buzzed while she was in the shower. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, lighting up with a message preview. My heart pounded as I glanced at it. The message was from someone named Brad and read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." I froze. My first instinct was to pretend I hadn't seen it, to let it go and trust her. But that tiny seed of doubt had grown into something monstrous, and it wouldn't let me look away. My hands shook as I unlocked her phone. She'd given me her passcode months ago, back when trust between us was a given. The messages told a story I didn't want to read. There were dozens of them, spanning months. Brad wasn't just some colleague or friend. He was something far more intimate. The words on the screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. How could she do this? How long had this been going on? My mind raced with questions, but there were no answers, just the cold, undeniable truth staring back at me. Amanda came out of the shower, her hair wrapped in a towel, and froze when she saw me holding her phone. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice a mix of anger and fear. I looked up at her, my heart shattered but my voice steady. "Who is Brad?" Her face went pale, and for a moment she said nothing. Then, as if flipping a switch, she launched into a defensive tirade. "You had no right to go through my phone, that's private!" she yelled, trying to snatch it from my hands. "Private?" I shot back. "Private like your late-night meetings and team dinners? How long, Amanda? How long have you been lying to me?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the weight of her betrayal. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The life I thought I knew was unraveling, and I had no idea how to stop it. The next morning, Amanda acted as if nothing had happened. She greeted me with a forced smile and asked if I wanted coffee. The audacity of her normalcy made my blood boil. I couldn't understand how she could be so calm, so indifferent, after everything I'd discovered. I spent the day in a daze replaying our confrontation over and over in my mind. Every time I thought about her messages with Brad, my stomach churned. But more than anger, I felt a deep, suffocating sadness. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the years of trust and love that she'd so carelessly thrown away. That evening, I made a decision. If Amanda was going to pretend nothing had happened, so would I. But not because I forgave her. No, my silence wasn't about forgiveness. It was about survival. If she wanted to play games, I'd play along. But I wasn't going to lose. Not this time. Chapter 3. Deception as an Art. Amanda had always been good at wearing masks, but now her skill was unparalleled. Every smile, every kiss, every loving glance felt rehearsed, calculated. To anyone on the outside, she was the perfect wife. To Ethan, she was an enigma wrapped in layers of deceit. Her sudden affection a stark contrast to the growing distance of the past month sent shivers down his spine. Was she trying to make amends, or was it just another act? Ethan's nights grew restless. He spent hours replaying moments in his mind, searching for clues. The text messages he had found were ambiguous, but the tone intimate, flirtatious was unmistakable. Still, he clung to hope. What if he was overreacting? What if it was all a misunderstanding? Yet, Amanda's actions only deepened his doubts. When he brought her coffee one morning, she quickly minimized a window on her laptop. Her smile seemed forced as she thanked him, her eyes avoiding his. Ethan's heart sank. The woman he once trusted implicitly now felt like a stranger. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan began subtly observing her. He noticed how she meticulously locked her phone, how she seemed distracted during conversations, how her laughter sounded hollow. Yet, every time he gathered the courage to confront her, she disarmed him with kindness. She would cook his favorite meals, surprise him with small gifts, and whisper sweet nothings that left him questioning his own sanity. One evening, during a dinner with friends, Ethan caught a peculiar exchange. Amanda shared a private smile with one of their mutual friends, a smile that lingered just a second too long. Ethan's mind raced. Was he imagining things, or was there something more sinister at play? His friends, once a source of comfort, now seemed complicit in a conspiracy he couldn't quite grasp. Ethan's attempts to gather evidence were met with frustration. Amanda was meticulous, leaving no trace of her duplicity. Each failed attempt chipped away at his confidence. He started questioning himself. Was he too paranoid? Or was Amanda a master manipulator, leading him down a path of self-doubt? His inner turmoil grew unbearable. On one hand, he yearned to believe in the woman he had loved so deeply. On the other, the cracks in their relationship were becoming impossible to ignore. Amanda's facade was flawless, but Ethan's instincts told him there was a storm brewing beneath the surface. One night, as Amanda slept soundly beside him, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He realized he was no longer living in a marriage but a performance zone where he was merely an unwitting audience member. It was in that moment that he made a vow to himself. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The stage was set. Amanda might have perfected the art of deception, but Ethan was ready to become her most relentless critic. Chapter 4. The Revelation of Truth. Ethan's first step was to admit that he couldn't face this battle alone. The complexity of Amanda's deception demanded expertise he didn't possess. Swallowing his pride, he reached out to a private investigator, a grizzled man named Lucas who had seen it all. Lucas listened intently as Ethan recounted the details of Amanda's behavior, his own suspicions, and the small haunting clues that kept him awake at night. With a nod, Lucas assured Ethan that no secret could remain buried forever. The days that followed were a blur of anticipation and dread. Ethan feigned normalcy around Amanda, forcing smiles and small talk, while Lucas began his discreet surveillance. Ethan's heart pounded each time his phone buzzed, hoping for updates yet fearing what they might reveal. He felt like a man teetering on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. Then came the call. Lucas's voice was calm, almost detached, as he delivered the findings. Amanda's late nights at work weren't what they seemed. Photos and documents painted a damning picture. Clandestine meetings with a man Ethan didn't recognize, expensive gifts exchanged, and hotel receipts that left no room for doubt. But the most gut-wrenching revelation was the duration of the affair years. Amanda's betrayal wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was a calculated and sustained deception. Ethan's hands trembled as he sifted through the evidence. The images blurred through tears he refused to let fall. He had spent so long questioning his reality, only to find that the truth was far worse than he had imagined. Amanda had woven her web of lies with precision, ensnaring not only Ethan but their entire circle of friends. Lucas's report revealed that some of their closest companions knew about the affair and had chosen to stay silent. Confrontation felt inevitable, yet Ethan hesitated. He wanted answers, but more than that, he wanted to understand why. What had driven Amanda to such lengths? Did she ever love him, or had their entire marriage been a charade? The weight of these questions bore down on him, suffocating and unrelenting. One evening, as Amanda prepared dinner, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the folder of evidence in front of him. His heart thundered in his chest as he slid it across to her. "Explain this," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. Amanda's face froze as she opened the folder. For a fleeting moment, Ethan saw a crack in her facade, a flash of panic before she composed herself. She closed the folder slowly, her expression unreadable. "It's not what you think," she began, but Ethan cut her off. "Don't," he said, his voice firmer now. "Don't insult me with more lies." The confrontation that followed was a tempest of accusations and denials. Amanda alternated between defensiveness and feigned remorse, her words a tangle of excuses and justifications. Ethan saw through it all. The woman he had once adored now seemed like a stranger, her every word dripping with manipulation. By the end of the night, Amanda's mask had crumbled entirely. She didn't beg for forgiveness or attempt to salvage their marriage. Instead, she turned cold, her words cutting like a blade. "You've always been weak, Ethan," she sneered. "That's why it was so easy to fool you." Ethan's world shattered. The love he had fought so hard to preserve was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of Amanda's contempt. As she walked away, leaving him alone in the empty kitchen, Ethan realized that this wasn't just the end of their marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter where he would reclaim his life and his dignity, no matter what it took. Chapter 5. A shattered world. Ethan sat in the darkened kitchen long after Amanda had left the room, her biting words echoing in his mind. Weak. The accusation seared into him, fanning the flames of his despair. His hands trembled as he clutched the edge of the table, his knuckles white with tension. The evidence lay strewn across the table like a battlefield, a testament to the life he thought he knew but never truly understood. Days turned into a haze of pain and isolation. Ethan avoided work, ignored calls from concerned friends, and spent hours lost in thought. Every corner of their home bore the weight of memories now tainted by Amanda's betrayal. Their wedding photo on the mantel mocked him with its promise of eternal love, a promise Amanda had shattered with ease. Ethan's mind replayed the confrontation in excruciating detail. He had imagined countless scenarios where Amanda would break down, beg for forgiveness, and admit to her mistakes. Instead, her coldness and disdain left him questioning everything about their relationship. Was it all a lie? Had he been so blinded by love that he missed the glaring signs? The pitying looks from mutual friends only deepened his sense of humiliation. Ethan began to suspect that everyone around him had known about Amanda's infidelity but chose to remain silent. The thought gnawed at him, fueling a growing resentment that threatened to consume him. In the quiet moments, Ethan grappled with the weight of his emotions. Anger, sorrow, and self-doubt swirled within him, a storm with no end in sight. Yet beneath the chaos, a flicker of resolve began to take shape. Amanda's betrayal had shattered him, but it had also awakened something he hadn't felt in years, a desire to fight back. Ethan started by reclaiming small pieces of his routine. He cleaned the house, removing every trace of Amanda's presence. Her clothes, her photos, her carefully curated decor of it went into boxes destined for the curb. The act of purging their shared life was cathartic, a physical manifestation of his determination to move forward. But moving on wasn't enough. Ethan wanted justice, not just for himself, but for the years he had wasted on a woman who treated his love as disposable. He began to channel his pain into planning, his mind sharp and focused. If Amanda thought she could walk away unscathed, she was gravely mistaken. Ethan revisited the evidence Lucas had provided, scrutinizing every detail for an opportunity to strike back. He noticed inconsistencies in Amanda's finances, hints of questionable dealings that could unravel her carefully constructed image. The realization sparked a newfound sense of purpose. Amanda had built her life on lies, and Ethan was determined to expose her for who she truly was. One night, as he stood on the porch of their once happy home, Ethan made a silent vow. He would no longer be the man Amanda called weak. He would rise from the ashes of their marriage, stronger and more resolute than ever. Amanda had underestimated him, and that would be her greatest mistake. The world Ethan knew was gone, replaced by a reality he never imagined. But within that shattered world lay the foundation for something new, something unbreakable. And Ethan was ready to build it, one step at a time. Chapter 6. The Birth of a Plan. The days following Ethan's resolution were marked by quiet but deliberate action. Gone was the man paralyzed by heartbreak and confusion. In his place stood someone different, calculated, determined, and patient. He knew that to confront Amanda on her terms was futile. She thrived in chaos and manipulation. No, his revenge would be methodical, precise, and devastating. Ethan began by diving into the labyrinth of Amanda's life. He pored over financial records, old emails, and receipts, searching for cracks in her perfect facade. Lucas had already uncovered some suspicious transactions, but Ethan took it further. He discovered inconsistencies in her tax filings and evidence of hidden accounts. Amanda, it seemed, wasn't just adept at deceiving him, she had also been skirting the law. In his newfound clarity, Ethan realized Amanda's greatest vulnerabilities, her obsession with control and her relentless need for validation. These weaknesses, he decided, would be the keystones of his plan. It wasn't enough to expose her. He needed to dismantle the life she had so meticulously curated, piece by piece. But to do so, Ethan needed allies, or at least pawns. He reconnected with their mutual friends, masking his anger with a calm and composed demeanor. Over drinks and casual conversations, he subtly sowed seeds of doubt about Amanda. He played the part of the wronged but forgiving husband, letting slip small details of her betrayal, enough to ignite gossip without revealing the full extent of her duplicity. Amanda had relied on these people to uphold her image, but Ethan would turn them into unwitting agents of her downfall. Simultaneously, Ethan began to rebuild his own life. He returned to work, throwing himself into projects with renewed vigor. His colleagues noticed the change, mistaking his focus for resilience. In truth, Ethan wasn't just working, was preparing. His career, once a source of pride, was now a weapon in his arsenal. With financial stability and professional connections, he would have the means to execute his plan without hesitation. Amanda, oblivious to Ethan's intentions, continued to live as though nothing had changed. Her confidence bordered on arrogance, assuming that Ethan's quiet demeanor meant he had accepted her betrayal. She still worked late, attended social events without him, and maintained her carefully polished image. But Ethan watched her closely, taking note of every move, every interaction, every flaw in her armor. One evening, while Amanda was out, Ethan sat in the dim light of his study, staring at the evidence he had amassed. The magnitude of his plan weighed on him, but so did the memory of her disdainful words. "You've always been weak." Weakness, he realized, was a state of mind and one he had no intention of inhabiting ever again. As the pieces of his strategy fell into place, Ethan felt a sense of empowerment he hadn't known in years. Amanda had underestimated him, dismissing his love as a liability and his kindness as naivety. But love could turn cold, and kindness could transform into a quiet, calculated resolve. For the first time since their marriage began unraveling, Ethan allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The plan was in motion, and Amanda had no idea that her perfect world was about to come crashing down. Chapter 7. The Illusion of Normalcy. Ethan played his role with chilling precision. To Amanda, it seemed as though he had moved on. He began leaving thoughtful notes around the house, suggesting date nights, and even surprising her with small gifts. It was the Ethan she had fallen in love with, the attentive, doting husband. She appeared to relax, assuming that her manipulations had once again secured her control over him. But Ethan's kindness was not an olive branch, it was a mask. Behind the gestures of affection was a man quietly orchestrating a symphony of destruction. He understood that Amanda's guard would only lower if she believed she had won. So he buried his resentment deep, presenting a facade so convincing that even he sometimes doubted its falseness. Their mutual friends began to notice a change as well. "You and Amanda seem stronger than ever," one of them remarked during a casual dinner party. Ethan smiled warmly and nodded, all the while observing Amanda's reactions. She basked in the compliments, oblivious to the undercurrent of doubt Ethan had subtly planted among their circle. Meanwhile, Ethan worked tirelessly behind the scenes to lay the groundwork for the next phase of his plan. He delved deeper into Amanda's financial activities, ensuring that her secret accounts were poised for exposure at the most opportune moment. He also made anonymous calls to her workplace, hinting at improprieties that would soon unravel her carefully constructed professional reputation. Every night after Amanda fell asleep, Ethan would sit alone in his study, poring over his strategy. The illusion of normalcy he projected during the day was exhausting, but it was vital. Amanda's trust in his supposed forgiveness was his greatest weapon, and he wielded it with meticulous care. Amanda, for her part, began to let her guard down entirely. She even started confiding in Ethan again, sharing details about her work and her frustrations. She spoke of colleagues she despised, her ambitions for a promotion, and her disdain for the women she deemed beneath her. Ethan listened intently, storing every detail for later use. In moments of solitude, Ethan reflected on the man he had become. This wasn't the life he had envisioned when he said his vows, but those vows had been rendered meaningless the moment Amanda chose deception. If this was what it took to reclaim his dignity, then so be it. The illusion of normalcy served its purpose well. Amanda grew complacent, Ethan grew more confident, and the pieces of the puzzle began to align perfectly. The stage was set for the final acts of his plan, and Amanda had no idea that she was the star of a tragedy she could not escape. Chapter 8. Retribution begins. The first cracks in Amanda's world appeared quietly, almost imperceptibly. It started with whispers at her workplace. A colleague she had once undermined in a meeting suddenly seemed unusually reserved around her. A client who had always been eager to collaborate canceled a scheduled presentation. Amanda dismissed these as mere coincidences, too preoccupied with her pursuit of a long-coveted promotion. What she didn't know was that Ethan had orchestrated these small disruptions with meticulous care. He had anonymously sent her company's HR department a dossier outlining discrepancies in her accounts. The evidence wasn't damning enough for an immediate confrontation, but it was enough to plant seeds of suspicion. Amanda's reputation, once untouchable, now bore the faintest of blemishes. Simultaneously, Ethan subtly distanced her from their mutual friends. During casual conversations, he let slip just enough about Amanda's betrayals to turn their sympathies against her. "I've forgiven her," he would say with a sigh, casting himself as the wounded yet magnanimous husband. His carefully chosen words painted Amanda as selfish and untrustworthy, but never outright villainous, at least, not yet. The isolation Amanda began to feel was slow but deliberate. Invitations to gatherings became sparse, and the once warm camaraderie she shared with friends now felt cold and distant. When she confronted Ethan about it, he feigned ignorance, offering her hollow reassurances. "Maybe people are just busy," he suggested with a shrug, his tone so convincingly neutral that she couldn't argue. At home, Ethan's charade of forgiveness remained intact, but his actions hinted at subtle shifts in power. He took control of their finances, under the guise of relieving her stress. Amanda, distracted by her professional challenges, handed over the reins without much thought. Little did she know, Ethan had been preparing for this moment, consolidating assets and quietly redirecting funds to ensure her financial vulnerability when the time came. The turning point arrived when Amanda's boss called her into his office. The conversation was civil but firm. Concerns had been raised about her recent performance and discrepancies in her reports. Amanda, blindsided, struggled to defend herself. "I don't know where this is coming from," she stammered, but her boss's skeptical expression made it clear he wasn't convinced. That night, Amanda was unusually quiet at dinner. Ethan watched her closely, noting the tension in her jaw and the way her hands gripped her wine glass a little too tightly. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone laced with feigned concern. Amanda hesitated before shaking her head. "Just work stress," she muttered. Ethan nodded sympathetically, hiding the satisfaction that simmered beneath the surface. His plan was working. Amanda's once impenetrable facade was beginning to crumble, and she had no idea that the man sitting across from her at the table was the architect of her downfall. As Amanda's world continued to unravel, Ethan felt a sense of empowerment he hadn't experienced in years. Her isolation, her professional struggles, her growing paranoia was all by design. Yet, he remained patient. This was only the beginning. The final act, he knew, would require precision and timing. The retribution had begun, and there was no turning back. Chapter 9. The Climax. Amanda's life had become a fragile house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. Ethan's manipulations had turned her once stable world into a battlefield of suspicion and uncertainty. Yet she clung to the belief that she could regain control, unaware that Ethan was about to deliver the final devastating blow. It began with an invitation. Amanda was asked to attend a formal dinner hosted by one of their mutual friends, a well-connected figure in their social circle. She was eager to go, viewing it as an opportunity to repair the strained relationships with her friends. Ethan encouraged her enthusiasm, offering to accompany her and even picking out her outfit. His warmth disarmed her, as it had many times before. The evening was a glittering affair, full of laughter, music, and the clinking of wine glasses. Amanda basked in the attention of their friends, confident that she could charm her way back into their good graces. Ethan stayed by her side, his demeanor supportive and calm. To everyone else, they appeared to be the picture-perfect couple, stronger than ever. As the night progressed, the host called for everyone's attention. "We have a little surprise tonight," she announced, smiling mischievously. Amanda glanced at Ethan, her expression curious. He returned her gaze with an unreadable smile. What followed was a slideshow. At first, the images were innocuous group photos from past gatherings, vacation snapshots, and candid moments. But then, the tone shifted. The next slide showed Amanda in the arms of another man, her face unmistakable despite the dim lighting of the photo. Gasps rippled through the room. The slides continued, each one more damning than the last. Text on screen revealing intimate conversations, screenshots of financial transactions to anonymous accounts, and more incriminating photos of Amanda with various men. The audience was stunned into silence, their expressions a mix of shock and judgment. Amanda's face turned pale, her breath shallow. She turned to Ethan, her voice shaking. "What is this? How?" Ethan's calm exterior broke into a cold, calculated smile. "It's the truth, Amanda," he said, his voice low but firm. "The truth you've been hiding for years." Her attempts to defend herself were drowned out by murmurs of disgust from the crowd. Her closest friends turned away, unwilling to meet her gaze. The host, once one of her staunchest allies, shook her head in disappointment. Amanda, always so composed, now stood exposed and humiliated. When the presentation ended, Amanda was left standing in the center of the room, the weight of everyone's judgment bearing down on her. Ethan leaned in close, his voice a whisper only she could hear. "You thought I was weak, Amanda. But weakness isn't staying silent. It's underestimating someone who loved you." He walked away, leaving her to face the fallout alone. That night, Amanda lost everything. Her friends, her reputation, and the carefully constructed image she had spent years building. Ethan, meanwhile, drove home in silence, the satisfaction of his revenge tempered by an unexpected hollowness. Chapter 10. Victory or Defeat. Ethan sat alone in the dim light of his kitchen, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The events of the evening replayed in his mind like a slow, deliberate film. He had done it. Amanda was exposed, humiliated, and left to grapple with the ruins of her life. For years, she had manipulated and betrayed him, but now, the scales had tipped in his favor. And yet, the satisfaction he had expected didn't come. Instead, there was an unsettling emptiness, as if the victory he had fought so hard for had drained him of something essential. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, contemplating the man he had become. The fallout from the dinner was immediate and irreversible. Amanda had left the event in tears, but the damage was already done. Their mutual friends, once her allies, had turned their backs on her. Her workplace, already scrutinizing her behavior, launched a formal investigation into the financial discrepancies Ethan had subtly exposed. Within days, she was suspended, her career hanging by a thread. Ethan should have felt triumphant. He had dismantled Amanda's world with precision, proving that he was not the weak, naive man she had believed him to be. But as he sat there in the quiet of the night, he couldn't shake the question that gnawed at him. What now? Revenge had consumed him, driving every decision, every action. It had been his purpose, his reason to wake up each morning. But now that it was over, he felt unmoored, as if he had lost the very thing that had kept him grounded. He thought of the life he had once imagined with Amanda, life built on love, trust, and partnership. That dream was long dead, replaced by a reality he had never anticipated. The next morning, Ethan received a text from Amanda. It was short, bitter, and full of venom. "You destroyed me. I hope it was worth it." He stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting the message without responding. Was it worth it? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that he couldn't undo what had been done. Amanda's choices had set this chain of events in motion, but his response had ensured there was no turning back. Over the following weeks, Ethan began to piece together the remnants of his life. He sold the house, unable to bear the memories that lingered within its walls, and moved to a small apartment in a different city. He threw himself into his work, finding solace in the structure and predictability of his career. Slowly, he began to rebuild. But the scars remained. In quiet moments, he would think of Amanda not the woman she had become, but the woman he had once loved. He wondered if he would ever find that kind of connection again, or if the betrayal had left him too broken to try. In the final days before he left the city, Ethan wrote Amanda a letter. He didn't expect her to read it, let alone respond. but he needed to put his thoughts into words. You were my world, and you shattered it. I will never understand why. I didn't destroy you, Amanda. You did that yourself. I only revealed the truth. I hope one day you find peace, as I hope to find my own. He sealed the letter and left it on her doorstep, a quiet gesture of closure. Then, he drove away, leaving the past behind. As Ethan settled into his new life, he began to feel a glimmer of hope. The pain would always be a part of him, but so too would the strength he had found in his darkest moments. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of happiness. Chapter 11. A New Beginning. The small coastal town where Ethan chose to begin anew was nothing like the bustling suburb he had left behind. Its quiet streets and salty ocean breeze were a stark contrast to the chaos that had defined his life over the past few years. It was exactly what he needed: a place to heal, to reflect, and to rediscover himself. Ethan found an apartment overlooking the sea, its modest furnishings a reminder of how little he needed to feel grounded. He spent his mornings walking along the shoreline, the rhythmic crashing of waves soothing the storm that still lingered in his mind. In the evenings, he worked on coding projects, finding solace in the logical simplicity of his profession. Though solitude was comforting, Ethan knew he couldn't stay isolated forever. Slowly, he began to engage with the community. He volunteered at a local tech workshop, teaching teenagers the basics of programming. Their enthusiasm reminded him of why he had fallen in love with his career in the first place. It wasn't just about building systems, it was about solving problems, creating opportunities, and connecting with people. One afternoon, while working at the workshop, he met Clara. She was the program's coordinator, a woman with a kind smile and an easy laugh. Unlike Amanda, Clara was unassuming and genuine, her warmth a stark contrast to the cold manipulation Ethan had endured. Their initial conversations were professional, but over time, they grew into something more. Clara wasn't perfect, she had her own scars and stories of heartbreak, but perhaps that was what drew Ethan to her. She didn't pretend to be flawless, and she didn't expect perfection from him. With her, he felt a sense of ease he hadn't known in years. Still, Ethan was cautious. Trust didn't come easily anymore, and he often caught himself second-guessing Clara's words or actions. But instead of shutting down, he chose to confront his fears. He shared pieces of his past with Clara, admitting his mistakes and vulnerabilities. To his surprise, she listened without judgment, offering empathy instead of pity. As the months passed, Ethan began to feel the weight of his past lift. His relationship with Clara wasn't about erasing what had happened with Amanda, it was about building something new, something honest. He learned to let go of the anger that had consumed him for so long, replacing it with a quiet determination to move forward. On a cool autumn evening, Ethan stood on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The vibrant hues of orange and pink reflected on the water, a reminder that even endings could be beautiful. He thought of Amanda, of the life they had shared and the pain they had caused each other. He didn't forgive her, but he no longer let her define him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was his to walk, unburdened by the shadows of his past. He had lost much, but he had gained something far more valuable, himself: betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Ethan's journey reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to rebuild. What would you do in his shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of the human spirit. Let's start the conversation.